The moment Ivy Yoon stepped onto the soil of Lin Yuan City, she felt as though her chest had been filled with sharp, chilling blades. On the first day of her return, the man deeply etched in her bones and blood precisely timed his arrival. Stepping into her home, the soft creak of the door hinge disturbed the dust scattered across the floor. Ivy Yoon had thought she had long since cultivated an unyielding spirit, able to calmly greet him with "long time no see." However, when Lucas Joe's icy, deep-seeing face suddenly slammed into her vision, Ivy Yoon's heart felt as if it had been violently crushed by an iron hand covered in barbs. The overwhelming pain tightened her throat, and her breath momentarily stopped. He seemed to emerge as a silhouette from a masterpiece painting, his tailored suit flawlessly pressed, accentuating his upright and almost coldly elegant posture. Ironically, nestled in his arm cradle was a delicate, fragile girl, petite and delicate like a porcelain doll. "Long time no see." The first to break the silence was Lucas Joe, his voice deep and magnetic, yet even colder than the biting wind outside the window. His knotted hands handed over a golden embossed invitation, its edges so sharp they seemed capable of cutting through a person's gaze. "During the middle of next month, on the 15th, will be the joyous day of my wedding with Lily. I hope Miss Yoon can grace us with your presence." Ivy Yoon moving stiffly, she took it, and her fingertips accidentally brushed against his skin the moment she touched the cold paper. That once familiar warmth, which had once made her tremble, now only left her fingertips numb with detachment. Lucas Joe's expression remained impassive, as if facing a complete stranger. He tugged at the corner of his mouth and dropped another bombshell. "Also, Lily specifically asked to invite Miss Yoon to be her maid of honor." The air seemed to solidify into actual ice at that moment. Heavy and pressing down on Ivy Yoon's shoulders, Ivy Yoon slowly raised her head, gazing up at the man who had once consumed all the years of her youth. In those eyes, once filled with tender starlight, now there was nothing but an abyss-like indifference. "Why did you choose me?" Her voice was slightly hoarse, as if rubbed by sandpaper. Lucas Joe curved his lips into a mocking smile, yet the amusement never reached the depths of his fathomless, icy pools of eyes. "Why not you, after all? You're the one who knows my past best. Wouldn't it be quite the spectacle for you to witness me putting a ring on someone else's finger?" Each word was like a poisoned steel needle, piercing Ivy Yoon directly into her most vulnerable heart. She struggled to hold herself upright, her face betraying not a single crack, but she stared intensely at the pair before her, her voice barely a whisper yet fiercely determined. "All right." Lucas Joe frowned almost imperceptibly, as if taken slightly aback by her almost humble compliance. "Woof, woof woof." A crisp, cheerful bark instantly shattered the suffocating atmosphere. A golden blur shot out from the dimly lit room, directly colliding with Ivy Yoon's knees and nuzzling affectionately against her legs. It was Pudding, her golden retriever, raised since puppyhood. Ivy Yoon was just about to bend down to give this old companion a hug when the shadow of death suddenly descended without warning. "Ah, help me." Earlier calm and well-behaved Lily Lu seemed to have seen a demon from hell. Letting out a shrill scream and twisting her high heels sharply, Lily Lu fell like a broken kite from the steps in front of the main entrance, the scene absolutely terrifying. "Lily," Lucas Joe's face turned deathly pale in an instant. He dashed forward like an arrow released from a bow, scooping up the girl from the ground, his voice filled with uncover-upable anxiety. "Where did you fall? Is it hurting badly?" "Don't scare me." Lily Lu's forehead was scraped, and bright red blood streamed down her pale cheeks, creating a particularly poignant and tragic sight. She trembled violently, curled up in the man's chest, tears rolling down in big drops. "Dog, I'm most afraid of dogs." Sob, "Don't be afraid. I'm here. No one can harm you." Lucas zuccoed softly to the treasure in his arms, his tenderness almost dripping with warmth. Exactly the kind of care Ivy Yoon had longed for in her dreams. When he raised his head again and looked at Ivy Yoon, who was still frozen beside the pudding, The tenderness in his eyes was instantly replaced by an icy coldness. "Someone, get rid of this beast for me." Ivy straightened her back abruptly, barely able to believe her ears. "Lucas Joe, what did you just say?" "I said," Lucas Joe spoke slowly, each word laced with deadly intent, "get this dog gone immediately. Beat it to death with a stun baton." Two black-clad bodyguards moved at once, their stun batons emitting a terrifying crackling hum, sizzling with electricity. Ivy-Yen's mind went blank. In that instant, she nearly instinctively lunged forward, using her slender body to pin Pudding firmly beneath her. "Don't, please, stop." A dull thud rang out, accompanied by a sharp, soul-piercing electric current, crashing upon her at the same moment. An overwhelming wave of pain surged through every limb and joint, her body convulsing violently from the unbearable electric shock. The world before her began to darken in patches, but she still clenched her teeth tightly, shielding the whimpering, trembling Pudding in her arms as if nothing could penetrate. "Ivy-Yen, have you lost your mind?" Lucas Joe's roar was laced with a complex frenzy. "For the sake of an animal, are you actually going to risk your life here?" Ivy-Yen struggled to lift her upper body, her back burning fiercely, as if her flesh was being stripped away inch by a raging fire. In the blurred double vision, she gazed at the figure standing against the light, familiar yet strange, and her voice trembled uncontrollably. "Lucas Joe, have you really forgotten everything? This pudding, you gave it to me with your own hands all those years ago." At that moment, time's gears seemed to stop turning. Ivy-Yen's memories unraveled like rewound film, wildly pulling back to that turbulent 18-year-old self, that year. Ivy-Yen's parents passed away in a tragic car accident. On the third day after the funeral, she locked herself in the empty room, refusing to eat or drink, her soul seemingly having already followed her parents to another world. It was Lucas Joe, that arrogant teenager, who forcibly broke open the locked door. He didn't offer any hollow words of comfort. Instead, he simply dragged her out of the darkness and held her tightly in his arms. He gently stroked her long hair over and over again, whispering softly in her ear, "Ivy, don't be afraid. I'll always be your strongest support in this life." In those dark days, he truly kept his promise without fail. He kept finding new ways to coax her into eating, accompanied her to watch the sunset on the empty playground. And every night when she was terrified awake by nightmares, he was always the first to answer her call. It was he who, with all his patience and ultimate tenderness, slowly pulled her out of the quagmire of despair, bit by bit. A month later, in the early morning, he held a fluffy little golden retriever puppy rolling in his arms. The little creature had eyes moist like black onyx soaked in water, wagging its tail frantically at her. "This little one is called Pudding." The boy's fingertips gently brushed against her cold knuckles, placing the warm little life into her palm. "If one day I'm no longer by your side, let it guard you instead. It will shelter you from wind and rain, and cheer you up." The sunlight that day was painfully bright. He stood in a golden shimmer of light, his face softened with an expression so tender it could drown someone. He said, "Ivy, I will always be with you." From black hair to white, never missing a moment. At that time, Ivy buried her face into the soft, fluffy fur of Pudding, and the tears she had been holding back finally overflowed. But fate is so cruel. The person who once promised to stay with her until old age was now about to personally end the warmth he had once given. Lucas Joe flashed a brief, indistinct complexity in his eyes when he heard those words, but it was gone in an instant. Soon, his gaze became even more sinister and brutal than before. "So what if I sent it?" He curved his lips into a cold, mocking smile. "Since you chose to cut all ties 5 years ago, everything from the past should have been completely reduced to dust. I nearly forgot about this little fish that slipped through the net. Perfect. Today I'll send it on its way too. Don't stop. I'd like to see just how much hardness there is in Miss Yen's bones." The electric button swung down again with great force. 1 hit, 2 hits, like a heavy hammer striking a dull drum. Ivy clutching Pudding tightly, the pain from her back made her nearly faint. and a scalding, sweetish taste rose from the back of her throat, putting let-out piercing cries in her arms, the sound like a blade repeatedly slicing through Ivy Yen's heart. It seemed to sense the little master's pain and desperately extended its tongue to lick Ivy Yen's burnt, blackened fingertips, which had been struck by electricity. Lucas Joe looked down at Ivy Yen's face, as pale as paper. Watching the blood seeping from her back gradually staining her clothes, seeing that she wouldn't let go even as she writhed in pain, Lucas Joe's face grew even paler. "Brother Lucas," Lily Lou now weakly tugged at his sleeve, her voice laced with heart-wrenching sobs. "Please, I'm just a little frightened. Miss Yun had such a deep bond with you before, and after all, this dog witnessed your sweet moments together. How about we let it off the hook?" "No need." Lucas Joe's voice was cold and unyielding, devoid of any mercy. "I have long since erased her from my heart. Every second spent here at this so-called meeting makes me feel nauseous." Before he could finish speaking, he strode forward with a powerful step, and with sudden force, violently ripped Ivy Yen away from Pudding. Then, amidst Ivy Yen's heart-wrenching, soul-shattering cry of no, he grabbed the old dog, lifted it high, and violently slammed it onto the cold, hard marble floor. Bang! The muffled sound of flesh hitting the ground was especially jarring in the silent night. Pudding couldn't even let out a final whimper. His limbs convulsed a few times before going limp, collapsing into a lifeless heap. Thick blood quickly spread through the cracks in the tiles, staining Ivy Yen's vision red. The world seemed to press the mute button at this moment, and Ivy Yen stared blankly at the body gradually losing its warmth. Her heart felt as though it had been utterly crushed into powder by an invisible hand, each particle carrying a sharp barb, raging wildly through her blood vessels. In the next second, a surge of salty, metallic taste desperately broke through the barrier of her throat. A gush of bright red, almost grotesquely vivid, blood spurted out, splattering across the floor polished like a mirror, a sight that chilled the soul. Lucas Joe froze in place, his body rigid as he stared at the glaring red pool, his breathing faltering into chaos. "Lucas, she's vomiting blood." Lily Lou gripped his collar in panic. "She's lost so much blood. Get her to the emergency room now." Lucas Joe stood rooted for a few seconds, his gaze locked onto Ivy and the blood steadily dripping from the corner of her mouth. His Adam's apple moved uneasily up and down, but in the end, the flicker of hesitation in his eyes was completely buried beneath ice. He forced himself to look away, his voice cold as steel. "Leave her alone. She's always been the best at this sobbing and dramatic scare act. Just got a blood pack and fake throwing up blood, trying to win my sympathy, long ago. Yes, they were so young and carefree back then. She was mischievous at the time, always finding ways to tease him. Once, she actually bought a fake blood pack used by the crew and pretended to have a medical episode right in front of him. That day, Lucas Joe was so frightened that his face turned pale, and he ran frantically to the hospital holding her like a madman, even running several red lights. When she laughed and pulled out the empty blood bag from her arms, pointing at his startled face and laughing loudly, he didn't get angry, he just held her tightly in his arms, his voice trembling. "Ivy, as long as it's you, even if there's only a 1 in 10,000 chance that it's true, I can't afford to take that risk." At that time, Lucas Joe loved her more than his own life. "But, Lucas Joe, have you ever thought that this time, I'm really not acting? Death is already standing behind my door, knocking repeatedly. Actually, Ivy and Lucas Joe have been sworn enemies since they were toddlers." She would grab his pigtails and run to the teacher to tattle, while he would stuff her pencil case with green caterpillars. When he delivered an enthusiastic speech in front of the entire school, she led the heckling from the audience. When she was carefully preparing for a piano competition, he secretly hid her sheet music. It was a contest between two celestial elites, neither willing to yield to the other. The turning point occurred in the sweltering summer of her 16th year, when a sudden accident left Ivy hanging on the edge of the teaching building's balcony. At that critical moment, it was Lucas Joe, the usual rival who usually drove her to frustration, who lunged forward without hesitation. He clung tightly to her wrist, his upper body dangling in midair, the urgency making time itself seem to stop. After escaping danger, Ivian lay in the hospital bed, gazing with mixed expressions at the boy covered in scrapes. "Lucas Joe, are you out of your mind? If I actually fell, wouldn't you just pop a champagne bottle to celebrate?" The boy's eyes were red as if they were about to bleed, and he snarled through clenched teeth, "Ivian, are you really that stupid? Or are you pretending not to see? Can't you see that everything I've done these past few years was to get your attention?" It was the first time he had opened his heart to her, and then, that kiss carrying the scent of grass, fell boldly and awkwardly upon her lips. That feeling was so hot, it made Ivian's heart tremble. Since then, the proud and spirited Mr. Joe has become Ivian's shadow. He would on time every day place a warm breakfast on her table, and even ride his motorcycle across half the city in the middle of the night just because she casually mentioned wanting a dessert from the west side of town. When they finally confirmed their relationship, the entire Lin Yuan city was left marveling that the fearless Zhou Xiao had ultimately fallen into Ivian's hands. She once joked to him, "Lucas Zhou, you're officially mine for life now." He would wrap his arms around her waist from behind, inhaling the fragrance of her hair, his face lost in devotion. "If it's you, I'll gladly surrender willingly." They had imagined their future wedding countless times, and thought about the names of their future children, yet fate played the cruelest joke on Ivian on the eve of their wedding. That diagnosis of late-stage cancer became the final straw that shattered all her illusions. Before she could muster the courage to tell him the truth, Lucas Joe's mother appeared before her with an unmistakable air of authority. The usually aloof noblewoman, for the sake of her son, humbly knelt at the feet of Ivian. "Ivy, please, I'm begging you, just let Lucas go. He's at a crucial point in his career. If he finds out you have this terminal illness, he'll ruin his own life. Can you bear to see him live his whole life in the pain of losing his spouse? Can you bear to see him, in the prime of his life, rotting away in the hospital with you? I've already arranged for a hospital abroad, and I've brought the voice recorder. Just tell him that you never loved him, that you were only seeking revenge for all the teasing he gave you back then." Ivy, hating someone is always easier to let go of than remembering someone deeply. Ivian was completely shattered by the moral pressure of repeated "it's for his own good." She took the cold recording pen and, facing him, uttered the most insincere and cruel lie of her life. For the next 5 years, in a foreign land, lying on a hospital bed, she was like a withered flower, letting chemotherapy and radiation destroy her body. She heard from a friend back home that after listening to the recording, Lucas Joe completely lost his mind. He started self-harming, began working tirelessly, and turned himself into a cold, emotionless money-making machine. She could only grind her teeth and swallow the pain, not daring to make the slightest sound, afraid that her softness might ruin everything. Now, returning was not because death had spared her, but because the doctor issued an ultimatum. She had only half a month left to live. She crossed the ocean to return, just to see the man she had loved all her life one last time at the end of her life. Fate is fickle. He had already begun a new chapter, with a new beloved. She should have felt relief, but the sharp pain in her chest was more unbearable than the spread of cancer cells. In the last second before plunging into endless darkness, all that echoed in her mind was the dark red pool of Pudding's blood, and Lucas Joe the resolute figure as he walked away, without even a trace of hesitation. Ivian opened her eyes again to find the sky outside the window painted with the blood-red hues of sunset. This was the old Yun family residence, the air filled with the scent of aged wood. Chunbo had remained by the bedside, his already aged face now appearing even more haggard, with tears still undried beneath his eyes. In the following days, Ivian's health plummeted dramatically. Each violent cough was accompanied by gushes of blood, and she was so weak she could hardly walk alone. Chunbo begged her countless times to go to the hospital, but she just shook her head. "Chunbo, I don't want to die in that place with the smell of disinfectant everywhere." On the afternoon of the 4th day, a piercing cell phone ring shattered the silence inside the house. The screensaver flickered with the three bold characters, Lucas Joe, the number she had once set as a special contact. Ivy trembled as she pressed the answer button, and the voice on the other end was cold enough to make ice crystals fall. 30 minutes. Get to Ching Ching Bridal Shop right now to try on the bridesmaid's dress. Don't make me lose face in front of Lily. Ivy clenched the corner of the blanket tightly, her nails almost sinking into her flesh. Lucas Joe. I'm afraid I can't go in my current condition. Ivy, stop it. Lucas Joe let out a cold laugh, his tone filled with disgust. Didn't you get enough of that fake vomiting for sympathy act last time? To repeat the same trick twice, don't you find it cheap? I don't care what tricks you use. If I don't see you in 20 minutes, I'll personally send someone to drag you here. The phone was abruptly hung up. Ivy stared at the pitch-black screen, curling her lips in self-mockery. She knew that man's character. He was truly capable of doing such a thing. To keep that secret, to prevent him from discovering the truth, she had no choice but to don her mask once more. Forcing her already broken body to rise from the bed, she began applying foundation extensively in front of the vanity mirror. To cover her bluish-purple lips, she deliberately chose the most vibrant shade of lipstick. Even so, the person in the mirror still looked like a half-rotten flower, hastily glued back together. After change to a long dress that gave her a bit of color, she hailed a taxi and hurried to the agreed location. It was the most upscale bridal shop in Linyuan City, where each gown was worth a fortune. Lucas Joe and Lily Lu were sitting in the VIP lounge, their complimentary appearance stinging Ivy-Yen's eyes. Lucas Joe glanced at her heavy makeup and let out a disdainful snort. Miss Yun really has seen the world. This fashion sense with over-the-top makeup is truly enlightening to me. Ivy ignored him, unwilling to waste even an ounce of energy on an argument. She walked straight to the bridesmaid dress section and casually selected a simple, light blue long gown. This one will do. No need to try it on. Lily Lu smiled as she approached, her tone sickeningly sweet. Miss Yun, you have excellent taste. This color suits you best. Ivy ignored her, her gaze instinctively drawn to the wedding dress in the center of the window display, titled Tears of the Moon. That was the wedding dress Lucas Joe had promised to personally put on her, but now the bride was someone else. In that moment, memories washed over her like a tsunami. Not so long ago, that teenager had also held her hand at the entrance of this store. Ivy, at our wedding, I will definitely hire the best designer in the world, so you'll be the most stunning bride. But now, all the promises had become boomerangs, severely piercing her back. What are you still standing there for? Lucas Joe's voice was filled with impatience. Lily's wedding dress zipper is stuck. You go in and help her. It's your duty as a bridesmaid. Ivy clenched her fingers curled in her palm again. She mechanically turned around and followed Lily Lu into the enclosed changing room. The changing room was filled with the scent of expensive perfume, and 3 mirrors reflected the expressions of the 2 women. Lily Lu, with her back to her, pointed to the intricate zipper on her back. This thing is like some old person. Once it's stuck, it shouldn't exist anymore. Ivy carefully adjusted it for her, saying nothing. Once the zipper was back in place, Ivy was about to open the door and leave. Lily Lu suddenly blocked her path. Miss Yun, you must hate me to death, don't you? Lily Lu's gentle expression vanished instantly, replaced by a look of near-mad triumph. During the 5 years after you left, Lucas' tenderness, his wealth, his love, all of it belonged to me. He even told me he had never loved anyone as much as he loved me. Every word felt like a poisoned dagger, violently twisting in Ivy-Yen's heart. She recalled the sleepless nights in a foreign land, vomiting uncontrollably due to the side effects of medication. She remembered the moments when her hair fell out in clumps, forcing her to wear a wig and fake a smile. It turned out that the pain she had endured to protect him was nothing but a joke in the eyes of his new lover. Miss Lu, since you're so confident, why bother talking to me at all? Ivy-Yen's voice was surprisingly calm. Some things, once you say them out loud, you've already lost. Lily Lu's face suddenly darkened, her eyes flashing with a sinister glint. Ivy-Yen, Don't you dare act so high and mighty here. Since you've had the nerve to come back, I'll make you regret ever stepping foot on this land. The breakup back then was your own doing, and now the suffering is well deserved. Just looking at your face makes me feel sick." As soon as the words fell, Lily Lou moved like lightning, snatching a tailor's utility knife from the vanity in the dressing room. Ivy Yen had time to gasp in shock when Lily Lou cut the tip of the knife straight into her own shoulder. The next second, a piercing scream instantly echoed through the entire bridal shop. The solid wooden door of the dressing room was suddenly smashed open by a violent force. Lucas Joe, as he burst in, what he saw was a scene of red all over the floor, and Ivy Yen holding the blood-stained hilt of a knife in her hand. Ivy Yen. Lily, Lucas Joe let out a low growl like a trapped beast, crazily rushing forward and tightly embracing Lily Lou in his arms. Lily Lou breathed faintly, her eyes dazed, and her trembling fingers pointed at Ivy Yen. "Lucas, save me," Miss Yen said. "What she can't have, no one else should either. She said if you dare to get married, she'll make me die before the wedding." Ivy Yen had lived for so many years and had never seen such vile, reckless framing. She wanted to speak up, to tell Lucas Joe the truth, but when she met the man's eyes filled with disgust, hatred, and murderous intent, she knew it was already too late. In Lucas Joe's eyes, she was already a complete lunatic, a cruel-hearted demon. Young. Lucas Joe forced out the two words from between his teeth, his voice laced with a chilling, bloody menace. "I thought you were just vain and cold-hearted, but I never imagined you'd sink to such depravity." He held Lily Lou and slowly rose to his feet, his gaze fixed on her like he was looking at a disgusting mound of sludge. "5 years ago, you took my Joe family's 10 million check and disappeared. 5 years later, you can't bear to see me happy, so you want to destroy Lily's life." Ivy Yen, do you really believe I'm irreplaceable in this life? Which is why you dare be so reckless. Those hailstorm-like accusations, each one precisely piercing through Ivy Yen's already fragile dignity. That 10 million check was forcibly stuffed into her suitcase by Joe's mother to solidify her gold-digging crime name. She never touched a single cent, yet now, all of it has become a boomerang stabbing her. Ivy Yen tried to speak, wanted to say, "Lucas Joe, I never took your money," and also wanted to say it wasn't me who hurt her, but the blood welling up in her throat prevented her from uttering a single word. Lucas Joe didn't look at her again, hugging Lily Lou and dashing out toward the ambulance like a storm. "Contact the best surgeon immediately, if anything happens to Lily. I'll make someone pay with their life." In the empty bridal shop, Ivy Yen knelt in a pool of blood, letting out a desperate, hoarse laugh. The hospital corridor was filled with the suffocating smell of disinfectant. The red light above the operating room blinked. It was a battle between life and death. After an unknown amount of time, the doctor emerged, his tone heavy. "The patient's knife wound is deep, and she has lost a massive amount of blood. Whether she survives the night depends entirely on her fate." Lucas Joe felt as though his soul had been ripped from his body the moment he heard those words. Then, an unprecedented surge of violent rage exploded from him. He suddenly turned around, glaring intensely at Ivy Yen, who had been huddled in the corner. The next second, he appeared like a demon returned from hell, taking a few strides to stand before her, his iron-like hands gripping her slender, fragile throat tightly. "Ivy Yen, are you satisfied now? Did you get what you wanted?" Due to lack of oxygen, Ivy Yen's face turned from pale to purplish, her fingers weakly scratching at his arm. "Joe, Lucas, it really wasn't me. You're still lying at this point," Lucas Joe roared, his grip tightening as his eyes burned with a hatred capable of obliterating everything. "There were only the two of you in the locker room. Do you really think she would risk her life to frame you? Ivy Yen, do you think everyone is as scheming as you are?" He watched her as she arched her head back in pain, a glistening tear rolling down her cheek, his heart suddenly lurching in anguish. But this strange feeling was quickly overshadowed by the image of Lily Lou lying in the operating room. He suddenly let go, tossing Ivy Yen onto the ground like a rag bag. "Since you love harming people so much, Then use your sins to atone for Lily's mistakes. He looked down at her from above, each word cutting deep into her heart. The Lingjue temple outside the city has 999 steps. Now, go there, bowing with each step, kneeling until you reach the top to obtain the protective talisman. If you fail to bring it back, die on the mountain. Don't come back. Ivy Yun collapsed onto the ground, coughing violently, each breath tainted with blood. 999 steps. Bowing with each step, she gave a sorrowful smile. Lucas Joe, you want my life. Just say so plainly. Why torture me like this? Torment you. The pain you've brought to Lily is not even a fraction of this. Lucas Joe snarled through gritted teeth. Go or don't go. If you don't, I'll have someone dig up your parents' graves right now. Ivy Yun shuddered suddenly, staring intently at the man before her. The man she had loved all her life was actually threatening her with her parents' resting place. All right, I'll go. She leaned against the cold wall, staggering as she walked outside. It had started to pour heavily, don't know when. Amid flashes of lightning and thunder, the steps of Lingjue temple resembled a long snake leading to hell, occasionally appearing and disappearing through the rain. Ivy Yun fell to her knees for the first time, her knees crashing hard onto the solid stone steps, producing a grating sound. She didn't stop. Time after time, rain washed over her face, pale and gaunt from severe anemia caused by cancer. The skin on her knees quickly wore away, and a long, shocking streak of blood, mixed with mud and water, left a mark on the bluish stone pavement. Her mind had already begun to hallucinate due to blood loss and pain. She seemed to have returned to her 18th year. Lucas Joe, who said to her in the sunlight, Ivy, I begged for a long time to get this amulet for you. You must wear it well to protect you from all troubles throughout your life. On that long, endless stone staircase, Ivy Yun finally collapsed into the mud at the 900th step, exhausted from physical strain. Her hand, however, tightly clutched a good luck charm that had just fallen beside her feet. Whether it had been left behind by a previous pilgrim or a sign from the Buddha, she didn't know at that moment. Lucas Joe's black sedan came to a screeching halt at the foot of the mountain. Just half an hour earlier, his assistant had tremblingly handed him a medical record retrieved from the old Cloud Mansion. It clearly read, advanced gastric cancer, metastasized. Lucas Joe stared at the medical records, feeling as if the sky was collapsing. He nearly tumbled and scrambled up the steps when he saw the long trail of blood stretching nearly 1,000 steps. His lungs felt as if they were being ripped apart. Ivy, wake up. He lifted the girl, who was barely breathing, and the icy touch made him let out a desperate cry. Ivy Yun's eyelashes trembled, and in her final moments, she struggled to raise her hand, pushing the good luck charm into his palm. Joe, Lucas, from now on, let's both let go, never meet again. After saying these words, the eyes that once held him slowly closed. At that moment, Lucas Joe felt as though his entire world had collapsed. That was an anecdote people in Linyuan City would still talk about many years later. The powerful President Joe went completely mad after that rainy night. He personally sent Lily Liu, who had just been discharged from the hospital, to the darkest prison, where he specifically ensured she could neither live nor die. He spent the whole day sitting in front of the 999 steps of Lingjue Temple, holding a golden retriever that was so old it could barely walk, talking to himself. Some say he is confessing, some say he wanted to wait there for someone who would never come back, and the talisman soaked in blood, he wore it on his chest until the end of his life. The moment she stepped onto the land of Linyuan City, Ivy Yun felt as if her chest were filled with icy knives. On the very first day of her return, the man who had once been etched into her flesh and blood precisely timed his arrival. Stepping into her home, the soft creak of the door hinge disturbed the dust settling on the floor. Ivy Yun had thought she had long since cultivated an indestructible body, able to calmly greet him with long time no see. Yet, when Lucas Joe's cold, ice-like, and profoundly deep face suddenly burst into her line of sight, Ivy Yun's heart felt as though it had been violently crushed by an iron hand covered in barbs. That agonizing, Heart-wrenching pain tightened her throat, causing her breath to stop abruptly. He seemed to be a nobleman cut out from a masterpiece, his perfectly tailored suit without a single wrinkle, highlighting his tall, almost icy posture. Ironically, nestled in his arm at that moment was a fragile girl, petite and delicate as a porcelain doll. "Have you been well?" The first to break the silence was Lucas Joe, his voice deep and magnetic, yet colder than the winter wind outside. His knobby hands handed over a golden embossed invitation, its edges so sharp they seemed capable of cutting through a person's gaze. "The 15th of next month, the joyous day of my marriage with Lily. I hope Miss Yun can grace us with your presence." Ivy Yun moving stiffly, she took it, her fingertips brushing against his skin the moment they touched the cold paper. That familiar warmth, once so intense it made her tremble, now left only a numb emptiness at the tips of her fingers. Lucas Joe maintained a calm expression, as if facing a complete stranger, his lips curling slightly as he dropped another bombshell. "Also, Lily specifically requested, wanting to invite Miss Yun to be her bridesmaid." The air seemed to freeze solid in that instant, becoming a heavy block of ice pressing down on Ivy Yun's shoulders. Ivy Yun slowly lifted her head, gazing up at the man who had once consumed all the years of her youth. In those eyes, once filled with gentle starlight, now there was nothing but an abyssal indifference. "Why did you choose me?" Her voice was slightly hoarse, as if rasped by sandpaper. Lucas Joe curved his lips into a mocking smirk, yet the smile never reached the depths of his fathomless, icy eyes. "Why couldn't it be you? After all, you're the one who knows my past best. Wouldn't it be quite a spectacle for you to witness me putting a ring on someone else's finger?" Each word was like a venom-laced steel needle, precisely and mercilessly piercing Ivy Yun within the softest part of her heart. She struggled to hold herself upright, her face showing not a single crack, but she stared fixedly at the couple before her, her voice as faint as a mosquito yet unbearably firm. "All right." Lucas Joe frowned imperceptibly, seemingly taken aback by her almost servile compliance. "Woof, woof woof." A crisp, cheerful bark suddenly pierced the suffocating atmosphere. A golden blur shot out from the dim interior of the house, directly hit into Ivy Yun's knees. Affectionately rubbing against her leg, it was Pudding, her golden retriever, whom she had raised since puppyhood. Ivy Yun was just about to bend down to give the old companion a hug when the shadow of death unexpectedly descended. "Ah, help!" Just moments ago so quiet and well-behaved Lily Lu let out a shrill scream as if she had seen a demon from hell, and her stiletto heel suddenly twisted. Lily Lu fell like a broken kite from the steps in front of the gate. The scene terrifyingly dramatic. Lucas Joe's face instantly turned pale. He shot forward like an arrow released from a bow, scooping the girl off the ground and cradling her in his arms, his voice filled with cover-up-able anxiety. "Where did you fall? Is it very painful? Don't scare me." Lily Lu's forehead was scraped, and bright red blood trickled down her pale cheek, making her look particularly pitiful and beautiful. She trembled violently, huddled against the man's chest, tears rolling down her face in big drops. "Dog, I'm so scared of dogs." Sob, "Don't be afraid, I'm here. No one can touch you." Lucas Joe gently soothed the treasure in his arms, his tenderness almost dripping with warmth, the kind of care Ivy Yun longed for in her dreams. When he lifted his head again and looked at Ivy Yun, still stiff at the pudding side, the tenderness in his eyes was instantly replaced by an icy coldness. "Someone, get rid of this beast for me." Ivy Yun straightened her back abruptly, hardly able to believe her ears. "Lucas Joe, what did you just say?" "I said," Lucas Joe spoke slowly and deliberately, each word laced with icy intent, "make this dog disappear immediately. Beat it to death with a stun baton." Two black-clad bodyguards moved at once, the stun batons in their hands emitting a terrifying crackling sound of electricity, sizzling ominously. Ivy Yun's mind went blank. In that instant, she impulsively lunged forward, using her frail body to pin Pudding down beneath her. "No, please, stop." a dull impact struck, accompanied by a scorching electric current piercing her soul, both of them hitting her at the same moment. An overwhelming wave of pain instantly surged through her limbs and body. Her body convulsed violently, unable to withstand the high voltage. The world before her began to darken in patches, but she still clenched her teeth tightly, shielding the whimpering, trembling pudding in her arms with unwavering protection. Ivy Yun, have you lost your mind? Lucas Joe's shout was laced with a complex mixture of rage. For a mere animal, are you really willing to throw your life away here? Ivy Yun struggled to push herself up, her back blazing with pain, as if the flesh was being slowly stripped away by flames. Amid the blurring shadows and double vision, she stared at the figure standing against the light, familiar yet unfamiliar, and her voice trembled uncontrollably. Lucas Joe, have you really forgotten everything? This pudding, it was clearly the one you gave me yourself all those years ago. For that moment, time seemed to grind to a halt. Ivy Yen's memories rewound like a film reel, violently pulling her back to that chaotic year of 18, that year Ivy Yen's parents passed away in a tragic car accident. On the third day after handling the funeral affairs, she locked herself in the empty room, refusing to eat or drink, as if her soul had already followed her parents to another world. It was Lucas Joe, that arrogant teenager, who forced open the tightly shut door. He didn't utter those pale words of comfort, but instead forcibly pulled her out of the darkness, holding her tightly in his arms. He ran his hand through her long hair over and over again, whispering softly in her ear, Ivy, don't be afraid. I will always be your strongest support in this life. In those dark days, he truly kept his promise, standing by her unwaveringly. He found creative ways each day to coax her into eating, accompanied her watching sunsets on the empty playground, and every night when she woke from nightmares, he was always the first to answer her phone. It was he, with all his patience and ultimate tenderness, who slowly pulled her up from the quagmire of despair, bit by bit. A month later, in the morning, he held a fluffy, rolling little golden retriever in his arms. The little creature's eyes were moist, like black onyx immersed in water, and it wagged its tail frantically toward her. This little guy is called Pudding. The boy's fingertips gently brushed over her icy knuckles, placing the warm little life into her palm. If one day I'm not by your side, let it guard you for me. It will shield you from wind and rain, and keep you smiling too. The sunlight that day was dazzlingly bright, and he stood within a gilded glow, his eyebrows and eyes brimming with tenderness so soft it could drown someone. He said, Ivy, I'll stay by your side, from black hair to white, never missing a moment. At that time Ivy Yun buried her face into the soft, fluffy fur of the pudding, and the tears she had held back for so long finally broke through. But fate is so cruel. The one who once promised to accompany her until old age is now about to end the warmth he once gave back with his own hands. Lucas Joe, when he heard those words, a brief, ambiguous flash of complexity passed through his eyes, but it vanished in an instant. Soon, his gaze grew even darker and more ferocious than before. So what if I send it? He curled his lips, his smile filled with cold mockery. Since you chose to sever all feelings 5 years ago, everything from the past should be completely reduced to dust. I almost forgot about this little fish that slipped through the net, just in time. I'll send it on its way today as well. Don't you dare stop. I want to see just how rigid the bones of Miss Yun really are. The electric button swung down again with force. 1 knock, 2 knocks, like a heavy hammer striking a dull drum, clutching the pudding tightly. The pain from her back made her nearly faint, a surge of hot, Swedish blood rising in her throat. Pudding let out a series of wails in her arms, the sound like a knife repeatedly slicing through Ivy Yen's heart. It seemed to sense the little master's pain and desperately extended its tongue to lick Ivy Yen's fingertips, which had been scorched black by the electric shock. Lucas Joe looked down at Ivy in the ashen white face, watching the blood seeping from her back gradually stain her clothes red. Seeing that she refused to let go, Even as pain racked her entire body, Lucas Joe hissed, his face growing increasingly ashen. Lucas' brother, Lily Lou, now weakly tugged at his sleeve, her voice trembling with heartbreaking sorrow. Please, I was just startled. Mission has had such a deep bond with you in the past. After all, this dog has witnessed your sweetness. Why not spare it? There's no need for that. Lucas Joe's voice was cold, devoid of any cracks. I've long since erased her from my heart. Even one more second of these so-called meetings makes me feel sick. Before he could finish speaking, he strode forward with determined steps, using immense force to violently pull Ivy away from Pudding. Then, amidst Ivy-Yen's agonized screams, so heart-wrenching they seemed ready to shatter her soul, he grabbed the old dog, raised it high, and slammed it harshly onto the icy, hard marble floor. Bang, dull. Heavy thuds echoed sharply against the silent night sky. Pudding didn't even manage to emit a final cry. His limbs twitched a few times before collapsing into a limp corpse. Thick blood rapidly spread through the cracks in the tiles, staining Ivy-Yen's vision. The world seemed to hit mute at that moment, Ivy-Yen staring blankly at the body gradually losing its warmth. Her heart seemed to be utterly crushed by that invisible hand, each fragment of dust carrying sharp, agonizing hooks, raging wildly within her veins. In the next instant, a surge of salty, metallic liquid suddenly burst through the barrier of her throat. Fought, a gush of blood, so vividly red it borderlined on sinister, spewed forth, splattering onto the polished, mirror-like floor, macabre and shocking to the eye. Lucas Joe's body suddenly stiff at the spot, staring intently at the glaring red stain, his breathing disorder in rhythm. Lucas, she's vomiting blood. Lily Lou grabbed his collar in panic. She's bleeding so much. Take her to the emergency room right away. Lucas Joe stood frozen for a few seconds, his eyes fixed on the blood trail steadily dripping from Ivy-Yen's mouth. His Adam's apple struggled to move up and down, but eventually, the faint hesitation in his eyes was completely replaced by icy coldness. He forced himself to look away, his voice as cold as iron. Don't mind her, she's always been the best at this act, crying, making a scene, threatening suicide. It's just another trick, buying a blood pack to fake vomiting blood. Trying to gain my sympathy. Back then, yes, how young they were back then, so carefree. At that time, she was mischievous and always liked to play pranks on him in various ways. Once, she actually bought a fake blood pack used on set and pretended to have a medical episode in front of him. That day Lucas Joe was so terrified that his face turned pale, clutching her and rushing to the hospital like a madman, even running several red lights. When she laughed and pulled out the empty blood pack from her pocket, pointing at his shaken face and laughing loudly, he didn't get angry, he just held her tightly in his arms, his voice trembling. Ivy, as long as it's you, even if there's only a 1 in 10,000 chance it's real, I can't afford to take the risk. Back then, Lucas Joe loved her more than his own life. But Lucas Joe, have you ever thought that this time, I'm not acting? Death is already standing behind my door, knocking again and again. Actually, Ivy-Yen and Lucas Joe have been rivals since they were toddlers. She would grab his little pigtail and run to the teacher to tattle, while he would stuff her pencil case with green caterpillars. When he delivered his spirited speech in front of the entire school, she led the crowd in booing from below. When she carefully prepared for the piano competition, he secretly hid her sheet music. It was a contest between two heavenly elites, neither willing to yield before the other. The turning point came during a scorching summer when Ivy-Yen was 16, when a sudden accident left her hanging at the edge of the teaching building's balcony. At that critical moment, it was Lucas Joe, her usual nemesis who she could never stand, who rushed forward without hesitation. He clutched her wrist tightly, his body half hanging in midair, the urgency freezing time itself. After being rescued, Ivy-Yen lay in the hospital bed, gazing with a complex expression at the boy with scrapes all over his body. "Lucas Joe, have you lost your mind? If I really fell, wouldn't you just pop a champagne bottle to celebrate?" The boy's eyes were red as if they were about to bleed. He gritted his teeth and shouted, "Ivy-Yun, are you really stupid or pretending to be blind? Can't you see I've been doing all this these past few years just to get your attention?" It was the first time he had opened his heart to her. Then, that kiss, fragrant with the scent of grass, landed boldly and awkwardly on her lips. That feeling was so hot it made Ivy-Yun's heart tremble. Since then, the proud and spirited young Master Zhou has become Ivy-Yun's sidekick. He would place a warm breakfast on her table every morning on time, and he'd ride his motorcycle halfway across the city in the middle of the night just because she casually mentioned wanting a dessert from the west side of town. At the moment they truly confirmed their relationship. The entire Linyuan city was left marveling that fearless Zhou Xiao had ultimately fallen into the hands of Ivy-Yun. She once teased him, "Lucas Zhou, you're forever going to be my private property in this lifetime." He would wrap his arms around her waist from behind, breathing in the scent of her hair, utterly lost in her. "If it's you, I'll gladly accept it." They had imagined their future wedding countless times, envisioned the names of their children, yet fate played the most cruel joke on Ivy-Yun just before their wedding. That diagnosis of terminal cancer became the final straw that shattered all her illusions. Before she could muster the courage to tell him the truth, Lucas Zhou's mother appeared before her, exuding an inexorable authority. The once arrogant noblewoman, for the sake of her son, humbly knelt at Ivy-Yun's feet. "Ivy, please, Auntie is begging you, let Lucas go. He's at a crucial stage in his career. If he finds out you have this terminal illness, he'll ruin his own life. Can you bear to see him living the rest of his life in the pain of being widowed? Can you bear to see him, in the prime of his life, rotting away with you in the hospital? I've already arranged for a hospital abroad, and I've brought the recording device. Just tell him you never loved him, that you were only seeking revenge for the way he tormented you back then, Ivy." Hating someone is always easier to let go of than endlessly missing someone. Ivy-Yun was completely shattered by the moral blackmail of "it's for his own good." She took the cold recording pen and, facing him, uttered the most insincere and venomous lie of her life. For the next 5 years, on a hospital bed in a foreign country, she withered like a dead flower, letting chemotherapy and radiation ravage her body. She heard from friends back home that Lucas Zhou, after listening to the recording, went completely insane. He began self-harming and worked himself to death, transforming into a cold, emotionless money-making machine. She could only swallow her bitterness silently, afraid to show even the slightest sign of emotion, fearing that her softness would destroy everything. Her return now was not because death had spared her, it was because the doctor had issued a final ultimatum. She had only half a month left to live. She crossed the ocean to return, only to see, at the end of her life, the man she had loved all her life. Fate is fickle. He had already begun a new chapter, with a new beloved. She should have felt relieved, but the sharp pain in her heart was harder to endure than the spread of cancer cells. In the final second before falling into endless darkness, all she could think of was the dark red pool of blood from pudding, and Lucas Zhou's resolute silhouette as he walked away, without even a trace of hesitation. Ivy-Yun, when she opened her eyes again, the view outside the window was already bathed in a crimson sunset. This was the old Yun family residence, the air filled with the scent of aged wood. Uncle Chen had been staying by the bedside, his already aged face now looking even more haggard, his eyes rimmed with undried tears. Over the following days, Ivy-Yun, her physical condition plummeted sharply. Each violent cough came with spouts of blood, and she was so weak she could hardly walk alone. Uncle Chen begged her countless times to go to the hospital, but she only shook her head. "Uncle Chen, I don't want to die in a place filled with the smell of disinfectant." On the afternoon of the 4th day, the piercing sound of a mobile phone shattered the silence inside the house. On the screensaver flashed the 3 bold characters Lucas Zhou, the number she had once set as a special contact. Ivy Yun shivered as she pressed the answer button. The voice on the other end is cold as if ice chips were falling. You have 30 minutes to get to Ching Ching Bridal Shop and try on the bridesmaid dress. Don't make me lose face in front of Lily. Ivy Yun clutched the corner of the blanket tightly, her nails digging almost into her flesh. Lucas Joe, I'm afraid I can't make it in my current condition. Ivy Yun, enough is enough. Lucas Joe let out a cold laugh, his tone filled with disdain. Didn't you play that pathetic blood-spitting act enough last time, repeating the same trick twice? Don't you find it cheap? I don't care what methods you use, but if I don't see you in 20 minutes, I'll personally bring someone to drag you here. The phone was hung up abruptly. Ivy Yun stared at the black screen, a self-mocking twist tugging at her lips. She knew the man's character. He was capable of actually doing such a thing. To keep that secret, and to prevent him from discovering the truth, she had no choice but to wear the mask again. She forced her already broken body out of bed and began applying foundation extensively in front of the dressing mirror. To cover her bluish-purple lips, she deliberately chose the most vivid shade of lipstick. Even so, the person in the mirror still looked like a withered flower, half-rotted and crudely glued back together. After changing into a long dress that slightly improved her complexion, she hailed a taxi and headed to the agreed location. It was the most exclusive bridal shop in Linyuan City, where each dress was worth a fortune. Lucas Joe and Lily Lu were sitting in the VIP lounge, their picture-perfect appearance piercing Ivy Yun's eyes. Lucas Joe cast a glance at her heavy makeup and let out a dismissive snort. Miss Yun truly has seen the world. This extravagant taste in makeup is truly eye-opening. Ivy Yun ignored him completely. Unwilling to waste even a speck of energy on an argument, she walked straight to the bridesmaid dresses section and casually selected a simple, pale blue long gown. Take this one, no need to try it on. Lily Lu smiled as she approached, her tone sickeningly sweet. Miss Yun, you have such good taste. That color suits you best. Ivy Yun ignored her, her gaze involuntarily drawn to the wedding dress named Tear of the Moon displayed in the center of the window. That was Lucas Joe's promise to wear it on her himself. Now, the bride had changed. At that moment, memories surged over her like a tsunami. Once upon a time, that young man had stood at the entrance of this shop, holding her hand. Ivy, someday at our wedding, I'll make sure to invite the world's finest designer to make you the most stunning bride. But now, all those promises had turned into boomerangs, piercing her spine with cruel precision. What are you still standing there for? Lucas Joe's voice was filled with impatience. Lily's wedding dress zipper is stuck. You go in and help her. It's your duty as a bridesmaid. Ivy uncurled her fingers tighter in her palm. She mechanically turned around and followed Lily Lu into the enclosed dressing room. The dressing room was filled with the scent of expensive perfume, and 3 mirrors reflected the expressions of the 2 women. Lily Lu turning her back to her, she pointed to the intricate zipper on her back. This thing is like some old people. You shouldn't exist if you're stuck. Ivy Yun quietly adjusted it for her, saying nothing. After the zipper was in place, Ivy Yun was about to push the door and leave, when Lily Lu suddenly blocked her way. Miss Yun, you must really hate me, don't you? Lily Lu, her fragile expression vanished, replaced by a near-madness sense of triumph. The 5 years after you left, Lucas, all his tenderness, all his wealth, all his love, belonged to me. He even told me he had never loved anyone as much as he loved me. Each word felt like a poisoned dagger, wildly twisting in Ivy Yun's heart. She recalled those late nights in a foreign land when she had vomited uncontrollably due to the side effects of medication, recalled the moments when her hair was falling out in clumps, forcing her to wear a wig and fake a smile. It turned out that the suffering she had endured to protect him was, in the eyes of his new lover, nothing more than a joke. Miss Lu, if you're so confident, why bother talking so much in front of me? Ivy Yun's voice was strangely calm. Some things, once you say them out loud, you've already lost. Lily Lu's face suddenly darkened, her eyes flashing with a sinister gleam. Ivy Yun, stop pretending to be noble here. Since you dared to come back, I'll make you regret setting foot on this land. That separation back then was your own fault. And now this pain is well deserved. Just looking at your face makes me feel sick." As soon as the words finished, Lily Lou moved like lightning, swiftly snatching a tailor's utility knife from the dressing room's vanity. Ivy Yen hadn't even had time to let out a cry of shock when she saw Lily Lan hesitatingly stab the tip of the knife into her own shoulder socket. In the next second, a piercing scream instantly echoed throughout the bridal shop. The solid wood door of the dressing room was violently shoved open. Lucas Joe burst in. And the first thing he saw was a pool of blood on the floor, and Ivy Yun standing there, still clutching the bloodied knife handle. Lucas Joe let out a low growl like a trapped beast, rush over frantically, clutching Lily Lou tightly in his arms. Lily Lou breathed weakly, her eyes unfocused, and her trembling finger pointed toward Ivy Yun. "Lucas, save me," Miss Yun said. "What she can't have, no one else can have. She said if you dare to get married, she'll make me die before the wedding." Ivy Yun, after living this long, I've never seen such despicable, reckless frame-up. She wanted to speak up, to tell Lucas Joe the truth, but when she met the man's eyes filled with disgust, hatred, and murderous intent, she knew it was too late. In Lucas Joe's eyes, she had already become a complete lunatic. A creature with a venomous heart and devilish soul. "Young." Lucas Joe forced out the two words through clenched teeth, his voice carrying a chilling, blood-soaked edge. "I thought you were just vain and cold-blooded, but I never expected you to be this cruel." He held Lily Lou as he rose slowly, his gaze like that of someone looking upon a disgusting, repulsive puddle of sludge. "5 years ago, you took a 10 million check from my Joe family and disappeared. 5 years later, you can't bear to see me happy, so you want to destroy Lily's life." "Ivy Yun, do you really think I can't live without you? That's why you dare to act so recklessly." The hailstorm of accusations, each one accurately piercing through Ivy Yun's already fragile dignity. That 10 million check was forcibly stuffed into her suitcase by Joe's mother to solidify her materialistic crime. She never touched a penny. Yet now all of it has become a boomerang that stabs her. Ivy Yun tried to speak. To say, "Lucas Joe, I never took your money," and also wanted to say it wasn't me who hurt her, but the blood welling up in her throat prevented her from uttering a single word. Lucas Joe didn't glance at her again, holding Lily Lou like a whirlwind as he rushed toward the ambulance outside. "Have the assistant contact the best surgical experts immediately. If Lily has any problems, I'll make certain people go down with her." In the empty bridal shop, Ivy Yun knelt in a pool of blood, letting out a desperate, hoarse laugh. In the hospital corridor, a suffocating smell of disinfectant hung in the air. The red light in the operating room flickered, a game between life and death. After an unknown amount of time, the doctor emerged, his voice solemn. "The patient's knife wound is deep, and she has lost a great deal of blood. Whether she survives the night depends entirely on her fate." Lucas Joe felt as though his soul had been ripped from his body at the instant he heard those words. Immediately, an unprecedented wave of wild, ruthless rage erupted from him. He whirled around, glaring intensely at Ivy Yun, who had been huddled in the corner. The next second, he emerged like a demon returning from hell, taking a few strides to stand before her, his iron-like hands clamping tightly around her delicate, fragile throat. "Ivy Yun, are you happy now? Did you get what you wanted?" Due to lack of oxygen, Ivy Yun's face turned from white to purple, her fingers weakly scratching at his arm. "Joe, Lucas, it really wasn't me. You're still lying at a time like this," Lucas Joe roared, his grip tightening, his eyes filled with hatred capable of destroying everything. "There were only the two of you in the locker room. Do you think she would risk her life to frame you? Ivy Yun, do you really think everyone is as scheming as you are?" He watched her, her head thrown back in pain, a glistening tear rolling down her cheek, and his heart suddenly spasmed, but this strange feeling was quickly overshadowed by the image of Lily Lu lying in the operating room. He suddenly let go, slamming Ivy Yun to the ground like a ragged sack. Since you like harming people so much, then use your sins to atone for Lily. He looked down at her condescendingly, each word cutting like a knife. Outside the city, at Lingjua Temple, there are 999 steps. Now, go there and bow with each step, kneeling until you reach the top to obtain the amulet of peace. If you fail to bring it back, die on the mountain. Don't come back. Ivy Yun collapsed onto the ground, coughing violently, each breath tainted with the smell of blood. 999 steps. Bowing with each step, she let out a bitter laugh. Lucas Joe, you want my life. Just say so. Why torment me like this? Torment you. The pain you've brought Lily is not even a fraction of this. Lucas Joe snarled through clenched teeth. Go or don't go. If you don't, I'll have someone dig up your parents' graves right now. Ivy Yun's slender body jolted violently, her eyes locked onto the man before her. The man she had loved her entire life was now threatening her parents' resting place. All right, I'll go. She, holding onto the cold wall, stumbled and walked outside. It had started to pour heavily, don't know when. Amidst the lightning and thunder, the staircase of Lingjua Temple looked like a long snake leading to hell, flickering in and out of sight through the rain curtain. Ivy Yun's first bow brought her knee crashing down onto the hard stone steps, producing a grating sound. She didn't stop. One after another, rain washed over her face, which was deathly pale and severely anemic due to cancer. The skin on her knees quickly wore away, mingling with mud and water, leaving a long, shocking trail of bright red blood across the bluish stone slabs. Her brain had already started to hallucinate due to blood loss and illness. She seemed to be back at 18. Lucas Joe at the sun's edge saying to her, Ivy, I begged for a long time to get this amulet for you. You must wear it, so that you'll have peace for life. On that long, endless stone staircase, Ivy Yun finally collapsed into the mud after kneeling on the 900th step. Exhausted from fatigue, her hand, however, tightly clutched a talisman that had just fallen beside her feet. Had it been left behind by a pilgrim earlier, or was it a sign from the Buddha? She didn't know. At that moment, Lucas Joe's black sedan came to a screeching halt at the foot of the mountain. Just half an hour earlier, his assistant had tremblingly handed him a medical record retrieved from the old Yun family residence. It clearly stated, advanced stomach cancer with metastasis. Lucas Joe stared at the medical record, feeling as though the sky was collapsing. He nearly tumbled and scrambled up the steps. When he saw that long trail of blood stretching nearly 1,000 steps, his lungs felt as though they were being torn open. Ivy, wake up. He picked up the girl, whose breath was nearly gone, and the coldness of her skin made him let out a cry of despair. Ivy Yun's eyelashes trembled, and in the final moments of her life, she strained to raise her hand and shoved the talisman into his palm. Joe, Lucas, from now on, we'll never see each other again. After saying those words, the eyes that had once been filled with him finally closed slowly. In that moment, Lucas Joe felt as though his entire world had collapsed. That was an anecdote that people in Linyuan City would still talk about many years later. That powerful President Zhou completely went mad after that rainy night. He personally sent Lily Lu, who had just been released from the hospital, into the darkest prison, where he specifically ensured she could neither live nor die. He spent the entire day holding a golden retriever that was old and barely able to walk, sitting in front of the 999 steps of Lingjua Temple, talking to himself. Some say he is confessing, others say he wanted to wait there for someone who would never come back. And the talisman soaked in blood, he wore it at his chest until the end of his life. As those freezing chemicals flooded her body, Ivy Yun, in that cold foreign hospital, personally shaved off the last strands of her dark hair. Once like black silk, the long hair fell in clumps to the sound of the clippers. Like a silent and bleak funeral, she had once been the most radiant and exquisite flower in Linyuan City. But now she had become the emaciated, withered oddity that others spoke of with disdain. The sharp gazes in the hallway felt like countless tiny steel needles, pricking her already shattered self-esteem with relentless precision. When that searing pain surged from the depths of her bones, sweeping through her entire body, she once crept on her hands and knees, her fingers digging into the cold gap of the marble floor, just to beg the doctor for a painkiller that would offer her temporary relief. The turmoil in her stomach kept her curled up all night in the cramped bathroom, vomiting until only pale green bile and terrifying dark red blood clots remained. During those dark days, she had lost even the most basic dignity of being human, left only to collapse on the filthy floor, gasping for breath, which was more soul-shaking, these humiliations, trampled and tossed into the mud, or crawling on the hard stone steps like a beast, in that life and death struggle with death. She clawed her way back from the edge of the grave, fueled only by a single, desperate obsession. The thought that had sustained her through 5 long years was nothing more than the desire to once again draw from the warmth in his eyes before her life faded. Now, the face she had longed for day and night was within reach, yet she found herself plunged into an endless winter nightmare, leaned against the cold white wall, trembling like a withered leaf as she straightened her spine. Her eyes filled with shattered moonlight locking onto Lucas Joe. I can go for this so-called blessing. Her voice was as light as a wisp of smoke, ready to dissipate at any moment, yet it carried a fierce, resolute edge. But this is not to protect your beloved one. I go now only to repay the debt of your door-smashing salvation from years ago, for you. As her words faded, she no longer glanced back at the suffocating drama of tenderness. Turning resolutely and vanishing into the cold shadows of the hospital, Lucas Joe staring at the slender, frail figure in front of him, a strange, dull pain pulsed deep in his heart, as if an invisible thread had tightly constricted it. Just then, the operating room emitted Lily Lou's sharp, piercing wail, like a spell that instantly shattered his thoughts. The tenderness that had yet to take shape in his eyes instantly froze, like a fierce gust of wind engulfing the operating room door. Leaving that solitary figure completely behind, the Chifu Temple, a lonely structure, stood atop a solitary peak 30 miles from the city, its base assaulted by howling winds, as if 1,000 ghosts wailed in chorus. Ivy as she staggered out of the taxi, the last faint glow of the sunset was completely swallowed by the surging night. The 999 stone steps, layered upward in the twilight, resembled a giant serpent leading to hell, its bloodied mouth agape. She stood at the mountain gate, her knee bones slamming harshly onto the cold stone slab, producing a dull, grating sound. Then, she lowered her body, forehead pressing against the hard blue stone, emitting a solemn and sorrowful sound of kowtowing. With every step, one must endure a double torment of dignity and flesh, less than 100 levels, and her already failing lungs felt as if burned by fire. Filled with a heavy iron taste with every breath, the forehead was already split open. Warm liquid streaming down the nose bridge, staining the cold steps with striking red streaks, but her mind stubbornly began to replay those dreamlike memories. Back then, that spirited young man had crouched halfway up the stone steps, taking her shoulder and teasing her as a delicate little thing. He carried her on his back, step by step, saying that as long as she wished, he would be her exclusive mount for this life. But now, he personally shoved that warm promise into the meat grinder, forcing her to sacrifice her broken body for a trust that had long since died. Ivy Yunchi could no longer feel the pain, mechanically moving her limbs until her entire body was drenched in blood. Only then did she finally obtain the protective talisman before dawn, when she dragged her body, seemingly on the verge of falling apart, back to the hospital. The lights outside the operating room remained as glaring and dizzying as ever. Doctors declared Lily Lou had turned the corner and was out of danger. Lucas Joe, whose body had been tense as a bowstring, finally relaxed at that moment, but when he saw Ivy Yun in that ghostly, wretched state, the disdain in his brow deepened further. Her body was covered in mud and blood, her disheveled hair stuck to her pale face, as if she had crawled out of a mass grave, a spectral apparition. She raised her trembling hand and passed over the talisman stained with the blood from her palm. "For you." Lucas Joe stared at the streak of crimson, his voice cold and devoid of any warmth. "Do you think, with that filthy guise, you can wash away the sin of hurting Lily?" Ivy, in the flicker of hope in her eyes, finally went out, and she let out a soft laugh, hollow and desolate. "I never expected you to show mercy." She turned to leave, but the man behind her seemed ignited by this disregard, growling violently, "Stop! Since you so enjoy suffering, go to the ice lake in the west suburbs to sober up. Cleanse your wicked heart thoroughly. Trial by ice lake. Torture enough to kill even a healthy adult male." He had unhesitatingly inflicted it upon her. Now facing death, the bodyguards lunged forward like hungry wolves, dragging her paper-thin body into the wilderness of the western suburbs. As the icy water submerged her mouth and nose, Ivy Yun felt death's scythe brushing against her carotid artery. The cold in her lungs intertwined with the burning in her stomach. Gasping through the choking water, she spat dark red blood onto the pristine ice floes. The bodyguards on the shore were terrified by the crimson lake, calling for mercy, only to receive a cold response from the man. "That's her period," in that icy water where she buried her last sliver of love. Ivy fully understood that the boy who had eyes only for him had died 5 years ago in the summer. When she woke again to the dazzling sunlight, she was already lying in a ward filled with the scent of death. The diagnosis in the doctor's hand felt as heavy as 1,000 pounds, the late-stage bone cancer metastasis resembling an unrevocable verdict. 7 days. It was the last time the Creator granted her to wave her hand, resolutely pulling out the cold needle. She chose to return to the house that was about to fall into ruin. Amidst Chinbo's flowing tears, it was the 3rd day of her fading. She curled up in the empty living room, spitting out blood in large gulps that stained the expensive Persian carpets with filth. To suppress the agony that drove her mad, she crazily slammed her forehead against the wall until her consciousness once again faded into chaos. In that haze, she accidentally dialed the number hidden deepest in her heart, when Lucas Joe's cold, knife-like voice rang out. She jolted awake as if electrocuted, followed by a devastating sense of humiliation. She suddenly smashed her phone, only to be met with Lily Lu breaking through the door with her people. Lily Lu's ferocity and the bodyguard's iron fist fell simultaneously, seeking cruel pleasure on her ill, dying body. Even in that maliciously connected phone call, Lucas Joe himself heard the false testimony of her betrayal. His words, "You make me sick," became the final straw that broke her soul. Snow began to fall heavily once more over the northern city. Joe's mother once again brought the suffocating expulsion order from 5 years ago, demanding that she, a woman destined to die, vanish immediately. Ivy agreed. Within that desolate laughter, she carried the empty box toward the crossroads fate had arranged. The chain reaction car crash in the wind and snow seemed like the most magnificent funeral bestowed upon her by heaven. She watched through a bloodshot gaze. Inside the overturned carriage, as Lucas Joe ran frantically, holding Lily Lu like a savior deity, he didn't even glance at the deformed car seat beside him, where a figure, almost translucent, lay underneath. Ivy slowly closed her eyes, hearing Lucas Joe his cold, judgmental skepticism amidst the noisy backdrop of the emergency room. Epilogue, withering in the frozen midsummer. The lights in the emergency room were as glaring as the midday sun, making Ivy Yun's already dilated pupils appear intensely white. That thin blue curtain became the final dividing line between two worlds. Outside the curtain stood the noble and godlike CEO of the Zhou family, wielding life and death over others. Inside the curtain lay a dying wife, curled up in a pool of blood, barely recognizable as human. Lucas Joe's leather shoes tapped rhythmically on the tiles, each sound like a knock on the doctor's skulls. He had just settled the startled Lily Lu, whose forehead was scraped, and now a hostile aura surrounded her, as if warning strangers to stay away. "Where's Professor Zhang? Didn't I say he should stay by Lily's bedside and not leave for even a step?" Lucas Joe's voice was not loud, yet it carried an intimidating pressure that sent a chill down one's spine. The lead doctor was drenched in cold sweat, his voice trembling so badly he could hardly form sentences. Mr. Joe, the accident victim's condition is extremely critical. Her spleen has ruptured, and intracranial pressure keeps rising. If we don't operate immediately, Lucas Joe let out a cold laugh, his tone brimming with unyielding arrogance. In this Linyuan city, my words are the rules. Lily, even if she was only slightly startled, she is 1,000 times more important than these insignificant passers-by. Go, fetch the doctors back for me. His gaze casually swept over the blood-soaked curtain, without even considering reaching out to pull it aside for a look. At that moment, Assistant Su Qing rushed in, drenched in sweat, clutching a thick file folder tightly in her hand, her face as pale as freshly made Shin paper. President, please take a look at this first. Su Qing's voice carried a barely noticeable tremor of tears, a shiver born from learning a truth too heavy to bear. Lucas Joe impatiently took the file and flipped through it casually with his fingers. The first page is a diagnosis report from over 5 years ago. It clearly read, Ivy Yun. Terminal bone cancer. Next came the dense medical records from foreign lands, each page documenting how she was burned by radiation in treatment rooms and how she vomited uncontrollably at night due to chemotherapy. The last page was an ultimatum from a domestic specialized hospital half a month ago. Life countdown. Recommend end-of-life care. Lucas Joe, the paper in his hand trembled suddenly, and his breath became unusually heavy for an instant. Who played this cruel joke? He clenched his teeth, staring fiercely at Su Qing, trying to find even a hint of joke on her face. President, I found this in the secret chamber of Miss Yun's old mansion. Su Qing lowered her head, tears finally welling up and spilling down. That check for 10 million has been kept untouched, hidden under her pillow. Back then, she staged that scene under her wife's pressure, just to prevent you from seeing her in such a pitiful state when she died. Crash. Lucas Joe felt something in his mind abruptly shatter. He suddenly tore open the blue curtain as if he had gone mad. Behind the curtain, Ivy, in her pale, translucent face suddenly collided with his gaze. She lay there quietly, her tattered clothes dyed crimson with blood, no longer showing their original color. The sparse hair that had once thinned due to chemotherapy, only to grow back reluctantly in clumps, was now matted to her forehead, mixed with dried blood. Ivy. Lucas Joe shook as he reached out, intending to touch her cheek. But at the moment his fingertips were about to make contact, he suddenly withdrew his hand. He feared that even the lightest touch might shatter this fragile, nearly transparent figure completely. Doctor, where the hell are all the doctors? Lucas Joe suddenly let out a desperate roar, violently turning around and seizing the attending doctor by the collar. Save her. Use every resource you have. Get back all the experts you just sent away. If you don't save her, I'll make sure you all die with her. The attending doctor, terrified by his menacing expression, collapsed to the ground, his lips trembling. Mr. Joe, you sent all the surgeons who could operate to the VIP ward just now. We've missed the best chance for resuscitation. At that moment, the faint undulating curve on the monitor suddenly let out a piercing, prolonged alarm. Drip. That long, drawn-out sound was like a rusted, blunt knife slicing horizontally across Lucas Joe's heart, severing all his pride and arrogance. And oh, Ivy Yun, wake up! Lucas Joe collapsed onto the bed, frantically pressing against her chest, trying to force back the life that had already faded. Didn't you say you wanted to see me get married? Didn't you say you'd be my bridesmaid? Open your eyes now. His tears fell heavily onto Ivy Yun's cold face, but they could no longer wake up the girl who once had only eyes for him. Some time passed, and then Ivy Yun's long eyelashes trembled slightly. It was a fleeting resurgence of life, the Grim Reaper's final glance at this wretched soul. She struggled to open her eyes, her gaze lingering for a moment on Lucas Joe's tear-streaked face. There was no hatred in her eyes. Not even a hint of longing, only a sense of relief, a quiet indifference. Lucas Joe. Her voice was so faint it was nearly inaudible, like dust that could vanish with the slightest breath of wind. Lucas Joe hurriedly pressed his ear close to her lips, crying like a child who had lost the entire world. I'm here, Ivy, I am here. I was wrong. Can we never be apart again? Ivy Yun gently tugged at the corner of her mouth, revealing a smile even uglier than tears. That amulet, did you lose it? Lucas Joe frantically pulled the blood-stained amulet from his chest, the very same one he had carelessly discarded by the frozen lake, only for Ivy Yun to beg for it back. Didn't lose it. I've always kept it with me, Ivy. I'll take you to the best hospital. We'll treat it, no matter how much it costs. Ivy Yun looked at him, her gaze gradually becoming hollow, as if piercing through his body, gazing toward somewhere blooming with spider lilies. No need, Lucas Joe. My biggest mistake in life was agreeing to let you carry me up that snowy night. If I had never seen the light, perhaps I could have died gracefully in that darkness. I'm about to leave, to see my parents. Before I die, I have just one wish. Lucas Joe clutched her hand tightly, the hand cold as an ancient ice block frozen for 1,000 years. You say, I'll agree to whatever you say. Ivy in her unfocused gaze regained a final spark of light, and she spoke slowly, using her last bit of strength. Please, never again appear at my grave in this life or any future one. I find it dirty. As soon as she finished speaking, her hand slipped from Lucas Joe's palm like a withered leaf, her head tilted gently to one side, and those eyes that had once captivated Lucas Joe throughout his youth lost their light completely. Ivy. Lucas Joe let out a heart-wrenching cry. He suddenly spat a mouthful of blood and collapsed unconscious beside the hospital bed. It was the coldest winter in the history of Beijing, with snow falling continuously for a full month. When Lucas Joe awoke again, Ivy Yun's funeral had already been arranged and completed by Uncle Chen. It is said that she was not buried in the Yun family's ancestral tomb, but instead asked Uncle Chen to scatter her ashes into the icy lake where she had once endured great suffering. She wanted to use that bone-chilling cold to wash away all the love and hatred of the past 5 years. Lucas Zui's crazy. Everyone in Linyuan City says that the all-powerful Mr. Zhou has secluded himself in the old villa on the outskirts of the west, talking all day to an old golden retriever whose teeth are falling out. Lily Lu, because of the car accident that left her paraplegic, had been eagerly waiting Lucas Zito come pick her up, only to be confronted with fabricated evidence brought by Su Qing. Evidence enough to send her to prison for life. Those recordings of her self-harming to frame Ivy Yun and the videos of her bribing nurses to switch medications were all exposed to the public in the most brutal way by Lucas Joe. On that snowy night, he personally pushed Lily Lu's wheelchair, taking her to the lake where Ivy Yun had taken her own life. Lily, look, how beautiful the ice is here. Lucas Joe's eyes were hollow like a black hole. He gently stroked Lily Lu's hair, yet it sent shivers down her spine. Ivy said she feels cold here. Since you love me so much, why don't you go down to keep her company and tell her how you've been lying to me for these 5 years? Okay. In the midst of that horrifying scream, Lucas Joe coldly watched Lily Lu being thrown into the abyss. He didn't care about the law, didn't care about his reputation. His entire life now revolved around a single word: retribution. In the 3rd year after that, by the frozen lake in the western suburbs, someone found a body long frozen stiff. Lucas Joe was wearing Ivy in the same suit he had worn on the day she returned home, gripping the worn amulet tightly in his hand, with Pudding, already lifeless, lying beside him. On his face, there was a faint smile, as if in that endless cold, he had once again seen the girl who had tugged at his ponytail, laughing freely and unrestrainedly. Ivy, I've come to return this lucky charm to you. Can you carry me once more this time? The wind and snow raged, obscuring all footprints. and burying that absurd yet heart-wrenching love deep beneath the white expanse of the frozen earth, Linyuan City remained bustling as ever, and the Zhou group had welcomed a new leader. Only the 999 stone steps of Qixia Temple, with each snowfall, would faintly glow with an unusual, delicate red hue. The old monk said that someone had broken their heart right here, and over the years, the sorrow could not be washed away. That was Ivy Yun's lament. Lucas Zhou, and also the eternal sin he would never be able to atone for in his lifetime. Lucas Zhou carried Ivy Yun's cold body down from Qixia Temple as torrential rain washed away the shocking stream of blood on the stone steps, 999 steps, each one soaked with the lingering warmth of her life. The wail of the ambulance pierced the rainy night. Lucas Zhou sat in the back compartment, clutching tightly Ivy Yun's unconscious hand. The talisman soaked in blood still tightly clutched in her palm. "Ivy, hold on, please." His voice was broken, completely lacking the usual cold hardness. When the red light in the emergency room came on, Lucas Zhou collapsed onto a bench in the hallway, soaked and disheveled. Assistant Su Qing hurried over and handed him a document, her face serious. "President, this was found at Miss Yen's old house." Lucas Zhou mechanically flipped it open, revealing a diagnosis report from 5 years prior, advanced gastric cancer, followed by a thick stack of medical records from foreign hospitals, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, consent forms for surgery. The final document was a palliative care recommendation issued by a domestic hospital just half a month ago. His hands began to tremble violently. Inside the file bag was also an old-fashioned voice recorder and a letter, the letter Ivy Yun's handwriting, dated 3 days before she returned to China. "If you're reading this letter, it means I can finally take off this heavy mask, Lucas Zhou. I'm sorry. I lied to you 5 years ago, not because I didn't love you, but because I loved you too much. When the doctor told me I had at most 3 years left, my first thought was, I can't ruin your life. Your mother knelt before me, begging me to let you go. She was right. Hate is easier to let go of than longing, so I played that part. Took the 10 million check she gave me, but I never touched a cent. It's still in the safe in the study of the old house. The password is your birthday. These 5 years, I've been counting the days in a foreign hospital, missing you. Chemotherapy took my hair. I vomited until bile came out. But the worst pain was when I wanted to call you, yet had to hold back desperately. I heard you've started a new life. And I should be happy, yet my heart still aches. I came back only to secretly see you one last time before your wedding, but fate played such a cruel trick. About the pudding, I don't blame you. It accompanied me through the hardest times, and now it's gone to find its parents. Well, that's good, but Lucas Zhou, please believe me, I never harmed Lily Lu. What happened in the locker room, you know in your heart, but you chose to believe her. If you read this letter and I'm still alive, please don't say anything. Let me quietly complete my final journey. If I'm already gone, then forget me. The debt I owe you in this life, next life, forget it. There shouldn't be a next life. The paper was stained in several places, the ink blurred beyond recognition, whether from rain or tears. It was impossible to tell. Lucas Zhou's vision blurred as he trembled and pressed the play button on the recording device. First came his mother's cold voice, "Ivy Yun, this is your last chance. Take the money and leave. Disappear forever, or I'll tell Lucas about your illness right now and see how he ruins his entire life for you." Then there was a long silence, followed by Ivy Yun's hoarse reply, "I'm leaving." Then came another recording, clearly a pre-prepared declaration of heartlessness by Ivy Yun. Her voice trembled, yet she tried to sound cold. "Lucas Zhou, I never loved you. I got close to you just to get back at you for teasing me when we were kids. Now that I've had my fun, this 10 million yuan will be compensation for my lost youth." In the recording, the sound of something shattering echoed, followed by Lucas Zhou's painful scream from years ago, "Ivy Yun, you fucking come back here." The recording ended abruptly. Lucas Zhou collapsed to the ground, his insides feeling as if they were being ripped apart by an invisible hand. All the hatred he had built up over these 5 years, all the self-righteous revenge, had turned out to be based on a huge lie. And he became the sharpest knife, stabbing the one who loved him most. The door to the emergency room opened. The doctor came out with a grave expression. The patient has internal bleeding in multiple organs, and the cancer cells have spread throughout the body. We did our best. How much longer does she have? Lucas Joe's voice was as dry as sandpaper scraping. Up to 48 hours. She's already in a deep coma. The pain will gradually fade, perhaps. This is the final mercy. Lucas Joe stood up and stumbled into the ward. Ivian lying on the pale hospital bed, her body filled with tubes, her once radiant face now gone to the point of unrecognizability. Her breath was faint, so light it seemed like a spider's thread ready to snap at any moment. He gently took her hand, the hand that once played the piano, pulled his ears, and baked birthday cakes for him, now with sharp, cold bones that sent a chill through him. Ivy, I'm here. He leaned close to her ear, whispering, I'm sorry, I'm late. For the next 2 days, Lucas Joe stayed by her bedside without leaving. He had Suqing bring in the best oncologists from Linyuan City and across the country, but all gave the same response, shaking heads. For the first time, he felt that there were things in this world that money and power truly could not buy back. Deep into the night the next day, Ivyun suddenly opened her eyes. Her gaze was unusually clear, even carrying a rare gleam, like the final surge of light before death. Lucas, she whispered softly, her voice weak yet clear, I'm here. Lucas Joe hurriedly leaned in. Ivyun's gaze slowly traced over his face, as if trying to etch his final image into the depths of her soul. You're crying. Lucas Joe finally realized that he was already in tears. This man, ruthless and decisive in business, was now sobbing like a child. I'm sorry. Ivy, I'm sorry. 1,000 words stuck in his throat, leaving only these 3 words in the end. Ivyun shook her head with effort. Don't say you're sorry. All of this was my own choice. She paused, her breath becoming slightly hurried. That letter, you saw it. I saw it. I saw it all. Lucas Joe clasped her hand tightly. Why are you so foolish? Why carry all of this alone? Because I love you. Ivyun smiled, pale but sincere. Lucas Joe, do you remember what you said when you grabbed me on the rooftop when we were 16? Lucas Joe choked out, I'm telling you, if you dare fall, I'll haunt you even as a ghost. Not that line. Ivyun gazed into the distance, as if returning to that summer, later in the hospital room. You said, Ivyun, don't you see that everything I've done these years was to get your attention? She turned her head and looked at him. From that moment on, I decided that no matter what happens in this life, I will protect you, even if the price is making you hate me. Lucas Joe's heart was struck by a heavy hammer, the pain making it hard for him to breathe. Ivyun's eyes welled up with a tear. Did it hurt when it left? That question completely broke Lucas Joe. He knelt beside the hospital bed, his forehead resting against the back of her hand, his shoulders shaking violently. No, it didn't hurt. It left peacefully. Ivy, I was wrong. I'm an idiot. Stop. Ivyun gently stroked his hair, a gesture that drained the last of her strength. I don't blame you. I really don't. Her breathing grew shallow and rapid, the line on the monitor weakening more and more. Lucas Joe, will you promise me a few things at the end? You name it. I'll promise 100, 1,000. First, stay alive and don't blame yourself. It was my own choice. Second, if one day you get married, don't tell her about my existence. Every woman wants to be unique in her lover's heart. Third, her voice grew weaker. Scatter my ashes in the valley behind Shisha Temple. In spring, wildflowers will bloom there. I love flowers. Lucas Joe nodded frantically, tears blurring his vision. Ivyun, her gaze began to wander, staring at the ceiling as she whispered softly, It's almost dawn. I think I see my parents. Ivy, don't go. Give me one more chance. Lucas Joe pleaded, but he knew some losses are forever. Ivyun's lips curved slightly upward, a smile of relief. Lucas Joe, in this life, I loved you. I have no regrets. The monitor emitted a piercing, continuous alarm. The line representing life stretched into a straight, unbroken line. Outside the window, the first rays of dawn pierced the darkness, entering the hospital room and gently resting on Ivy Yen's peaceful face. She finally no longer had to suffer. Ivy Yen's funeral was simple, as per her wishes, with only Uncle Chin and a few old friends present. Lucas Joe stood at the back of the gathering, staring at the small coffin. Feeling as though his soul had been hollowed out, Chinbo walked up to him and handed him an old iron box. "This is from the Yen lady for you." Inside the iron box was a thick stack of postcards sent from all over the world, addressed to Lucas Joe. Linyuan City, China, but none had ever been mailed. The first one came from Paris, dated 3 months after she had left. Lucas Joe, I vomited badly after chemotherapy today. The nurses gave me an anti-nausea injection. The Seine River outside the window is so beautiful. If you were here, you'd probably laugh at me for being overly sentimental. Actually, I don't like Paris. It doesn't have you. The second one. From New York, half a year later, my hair fell out. So I bought a wig. It looks just like how I looked when I cut my hair short in high school. If you see it, you'd surely say, Ivy and you looked better with long hair. Lucas Joe, I miss you so much. The third one, from Switzerland, a year later, the doctor said the condition is temporarily stable. I went to the Jungfrau and made a wish at the summit. I hope Lucas Joe will live a peaceful and happy life, and forget this wicked woman. The last one was from the hospital. Taken a week before she returned home, Lucas Joe, I'm coming back. The doctor says these are my last days. I'm not afraid of death, but I'm afraid I won't see you before I die. But if I do see you, I'm afraid I won't want to leave. You see, I'm still so conflicted. On the back of each postcard, there were faint traces of tears. Lucas Joe held the iron box and sat by Ivy Yen's grave all night. The next day, he did something that shocked the entire Linyuan city. He transferred 30% of his shares in the Zhou Group to Ivy Yen's name, establishing the Ivy Yen Charity Foundation, dedicated to funding cancer research and end-of-life care. Then, he took Ivy Yen's ashes to the valley behind Qixia Temple. It was April, and the valley was indeed filled with unknown wildflowers, white, purple, and yellow, swaying in the spring breeze. Lucas Joe opened the urn, letting the wind carry away the pale ashes. Ivy, look, the flowers are all in bloom, he whispered softly. As if she were right beside him. After that day, Lucas Joe seemed to become a different person. He disbanded his security team, sold his luxurious villa, and moved into the old Yun family residence. He left work early every day to go to Qixia Temple and sweep the 999 steps. This was the only practice that remained in the rest of his life. About Lily Lu, the truth soon came to light. A cleaner at a bridal shop stepped forward as a witness, stating that on the day of the incident, she had seen Lily Lu take a utility knife herself, and only began screaming after Ivy Yun had left the changing room. The changing room door was locked from the inside. Ivy Yun couldn't have injured her outside the door. Lily Lu tried to find Lucas Joe after being discharged from the hospital to explain, but she only received a cease and desist letter and irrefutable evidence that she had not only staged her injury, but had also bribed a nurse to tamper with Ivy Yun's medicine. Eventually, Lily Lu was convicted of intentional injury and defamation. In court, she screamed hysterically, Lucas Joe, you will never find someone who loves you more than her. Lucas Joe simply replied calmly, I know, that's why I'll spend the rest of my life atoning for it. Joe's mother came to see him once, trying to explain the hardships she had endured back then. Lucas Joe did not see her, only asking Su Qing to convey a message. You have lost a son, and I have lost the love of my life. We are even now. Time flowed like that, and suddenly 3 years passed. The steps of Qixia Temple had been Lucas Joe scrubbed clean. the bloodstain from long ago long vanished, yet visitors claimed that during the rainy season, the stone steps would take on a peculiar hue, as if saturated with something that could not be washed away. In the third spring, Lucas Joe collapsed while sweeping the steps. The diagnosis was advanced stomach cancer, the same illness as Ivy Yun. The doctor looked at the examination report, incredulous. "Mr. Joe, your annual health checks have always been fine. How could this happen so suddenly?" But Lucas Joe remained calm. "It wasn't sudden. I've been in pain for 3 years, but I didn't say anything." He refused all aggressive treatments, asking only for pain relief. "I wonder how much pain she was in at the end," he told the doctor. "That way, I can feel closer to her in the final days." Lucas Joe moved into a guest room at Chishia Temple. Every morning, he still insisted on sweeping the steps, from the foot of the mountain to the summit, step by step. Though his pace grew slower, the temple's old abbot would occasionally sit with him for a while. "Lord, attachment is suffering." Lucas Joe gazed towards the valley. "Abbot, I do not seek liberation. I only wish to meet her again in the next life. Then, I will bear all this suffering myself." The old abbot sighed deeply and said no more. On his deathbed, Lucas Joe asked Suching to bring the talisman, something he had worn close to his body for 3 years. He placed the talisman over his heart and softly hummed a song. That Ivy Yun was a song he had written for her on her 18th birthday, sung only once. The singing faded. Outside the window, another season of wildflowers blooming had arrived. Lucas Joe's funeral caused a sensation throughout the city, according to his will. His ashes were also scattered in the valley behind Chishia Temple. On the day of the funeral, wildflowers bloomed brilliantly across the mountains and hills, as if welcoming someone's return. Suching found the last letter left by Lucas Joe while sorting through his belongings. "If anyone reads this letter, please do not grieve for me. In this life, I was deeply loved, and I deeply loved one person, but I understood too late, and cherished too late. Ivy Yun, if there is an afterlife, let me come to you. Let me bear all the pain. Let me be the first to say I love you. By then, I hope you can give me a chance to repay you twice over for the tenderness I owe you in this life. If you don't want to see me again, I'll understand, as long as you stay healthy and safe." On some sunny afternoon, remembering that there was once Lucas Joe who loved you with all the rest of his life, that's enough. At the end of the letter, there was a line of small print, "Ivy, here I am, this time. It's my turn to wait for you." From then on, Linyuan City lost a cold and austere business legend, while Chishia Temple gained a tale about the 999 steps. Some say that every spring, the wildflowers in the valley bloom especially vigorously, as if fulfilling a promise between two people. Others claim that on damp stone steps after the rain, they once saw 2 blurred figures, a person carrying another, slowly ascending, their laughter scattering all the way. That laugh was light, quickly scattered by the wind, blending into the fragrance of flowers covering the mountains and fields, as if saying, "All regrets will blossom and bear fruit in another era."